I first want to put me on the map where we are, where I am from. Here is the report of Martin Tondell, which we were talking about, and I stay in Sundsvall, north of Sundsvall. I'm not sure I can handle this. No. Okay, you say Sundsvall, you say Gävle, Sundsvall, Umeå, Luleå. I stay north of in the black spot in Sundsvall. That is my home. And they forgot us after Chernobyl because they said it was more important that they took care of the creatures in the south of Sweden. So they put all the equipment in the south of Sweden and let us out. So I bought a monitor myself and started to measure the contamination in our area. And then I had met Alice, I had met Rosalie Patel, I had met all these fantastic people all over the world. We had had a conference before. So I'm chairperson of Green Forum, and Green Forum is sponsoring this conference. 1980 we had a referendum in Sweden, and then I started my anti-nuclear career because I was going around with my 4 children and trying to stop this idiotic thing. Because they said they had 3 alternatives, and one was to build out and one to stop and one to phase out when it's time, when we get jobs and the electricity is enough. And that one was, which was winning. And we haven't seen that they phased out anything, just 2 reactors. And I count my time in before and after Chernobyl, because we got rain in Härnösand, and I was very involved. I was a teacher then, so I was working every break and every evening. I was going around with my monitor, which I bought from America. And it was the same monitor as they have in Forsmark. And I became then also the party leader of the Green Party, 86, on our Congress. And 88 succeeded as the first new party in 71 years to enter the parliament in Sweden when I was party leader. So it was a historical moment. And I have been 2 periods in the parliament, and of course been working with energy, economy, industry, forest, and so on, and also education. And in 1990 I was invited to Japan to talk about harmony between human beings and nature, and I was of course talking about nuclear power and nuclear weapon as Siamese twins. And they just knocked me on my back and said, "Oh, little girl, you don't know anything," they said in Sweden. But now we have seen the truth. Now we have seen Fukushima. I've been to Hiroshima. And in Hiroshima you can read nevermore. But it has happened, I will say. 1995, I put myself as a human shield in the Pacific Ocean and went into the restricted zone of Mururoa because they were testing the nuclear weapons. So I was the only woman. We were 8 members of parliament, 2 from Japan, 2 from Australia, 2 from Italy, 1 from Luxembourg, and me. That is my background. Now to Sweden, this stable, fantastic country. They decided last year to allow building of 10 new reactors on the old places. And and they said it shouldn't be direct or indirect government subsidies to these plants. We haven't seen any legislation which dictates that so is the fact yet. 1990s, 5 of 12 reactors were stopped. And it was just because of small parts of insulation coming into the filter. And then they had to stop 5 of them because it happened in Barsebäck. And then we had a hearing, and I met Blix, Hans Blix, which I used to meet several times. I met him, and I asked him about, but if now nuclear power is so fantastic, yeah, why don't we build out everything so we can get rid of the carbon dioxide? No. It's not possible because doesn't have so much uranium. Okay. So then I think it's better we can start with renewables or cost efficiency direct, I said. And I also asked one person in our authority for radiation safety, if we put the life cycle costs of 1 kilowatt hour nuclear energy, how much would it be? If you count the health problems from uranium mining to the waste management and the storage for 1 million years. Can you please give me a price? No. It's a political question. But that is true. We have to handle this, exactly what I think you have been talking about before. And Mr. Professor Jurgis Wiedemanns, we were very close to a meltdown in Sweden in 2006. It was just a short electricity stop in a transformer station. The system didn't work. But one person succeeded to do the right thing. He didn't know that he was doing the right thing, but he did. So then we got out of this incident. This is from Taz-Zeitung in Germany. Yeah, and this year, someone forgot the wet vacuum cleaner in Ringhals reactor. This stable country of Sweden, with a stable security people watching reactors, and it became a fire. And 7 months stop. And you have been talking about that when it's not running, when there are technical reasons and so on, and this was one of the technical reasons, and it was a cost of over 180 million euros.
180 million euros?
Yeah. In Swedish, we say 1.8 billion SEK. Yeah. Why new reactors, I say? We have a surplus of electricity in Sweden to the 2020s. You heard we are exporting to Norway. And nobody knows the cost of building new reactors. And after Fukushima, we have made a poll in Sweden. It's CIFO, a well-known oil institute. And they say 8% wants nuclear energy if they have to buy, but 83% wants to buy renewable energy. They don't want to buy nuclear energy. Why should we then renew 10 buildings? I have been in Belarus many times. I've been in Ukraine many times. I've been caring about Chernobyl children and so on. Is this the vision or wish? This is a village close to Goma, where Gromyko is from. You have also Gromyko there now, it's in the Green Party, I know. And I have gone to Citibank. I think Citibank, you must believe in them. It's not Eva Goes, it's Citibank. And they talk about enormous technical financial risks involved in the construction and operation of nuclear power plants. Make them prohibitive for private investors. So then my question is, taxpayers, are they willing to pay it? Because it will be the taxpayers. And you have already said, high construction costs, long delays in building, extended periods of depreciation of equipment inherent to construction and operation of new power plants, lack of guarantees for prices of electricity, enormous costs of decommission. Adding to this, the global meltdown, consequent cautious behavior of investors, fiscal and revenue difficulties of governments in the industrialized countries. Yeah, this is a quote. The risks faced by developers are so large and variable that individually they could each bring even the largest utility company to its knees financially. We go on with it like most governments in industrialized countries today have only sought to limit the planning risk for investors, not the whole life cycle. But while it is important for encouraging developers to bring forward projects, planning is the least important risk financially. The survey goes on. We, which I am, environmental activist, would add safety issues as a major risk. Both the handling of highly radioactive nuclear waste and the likelihood of accidents at nuclear power stations. And we go on with Citibank. The cost of constructing a new nuclear power plant range between 2,500 to 3,500 euros. It's very per kilowatt hour. You see, we have different figures. And we go on. We see very little prospect of these costs falling and every likelihood of them rising further. To meet such costs, the operator would need a guarantee of constant electricity prices around 65 euros per megawatt hour for a long period of time. This is a long period of time and a guarantee. Another researcher in German Institute for Applied Ecology, Pissner, said most power plants have to be running for at least 20 years to reach the operation period free of depreciation and impairment costs. Only after this period, a nuclear power plant starts yielding returns. It depends if it's running, if it's working or not, I would say. And Christoph Pissner said, in addition, developers of nuclear power plants are confronted with yet another risk. The industry disposes of little references on the building's costs of nuclear power plants because there are very few units in construction. Yeah, people or constructions are not used to build reactors. You have heard about the reactor in Finland. They used wrong concrete. They used concrete from India, which didn't get hard because up in north we have another climate. Okay? Energy expert says that this is keyword Madeleine. The uncertainties linked to the construction cost of such plants have been magnified by the global financial crisis, which makes such huge investments unlikely. So, for a nuclear power plant of 1,600 megawatt, you need at least 8 years and a construction budget up to 6 billion euros. We have about 10 billion euros. That means that the investor of a new nuclear power plant would start seeing some money only 8 years after she invested a huge amount of money. And if the construction of nuclear power plants lasts more than 10 years, 120 months, the project becomes a financial catastrophe. And IAEA, you believe in that, says that construction delays jumped from 64 months to 146 months between 1976 and 2008. That is more than 12 years. It's more than 10. From 64 to 146 months. And we go on, it's also from the same commentary, but it's Squazzoni researcher. The financial crisis and the construction costs constitute almost insurmountable obstacles to the renaissance of nuclear power. And we have heard it before. The current economic crisis could make financing nuclear power plants particularly difficult. Financing costs account for between 25 and 80% of the total cost of construction because nuclear power plants take much longer to build than alternatives. For example, wind plants require 18 months to build. Combined cycle gas turbines need 36 months, but nuclear power plants take at least 60 months. At least. And the Citibank concludes that without taxpayers' money, there is little, if any, prospect that nuclear stations will be built by the private sector unless developers can lay off substantial elements of the three major risks. Financing guarantees, minimum power prices, and or government-backed power off-take agreements may all be needed if stations are to be built. And I say we need a new Green New Deal because investment in energy efficiency and renewable energies is the smartest. For each euro invested in energy efficiency and renewables, you can achieve up to 11 times more reduction in greenhouse gas emissions than nuclear power. And nuclear power is an investment black hole. It monopolizes enormous public subsidies. The decommissioning of NPP and managing radioactive waste will reach hundreds of billions of euros. Criminal or not, I say. In Sweden, the parliament has decided that no plant shall be run until there is a solution. Well, I must go back. A solution of the radioactive waste. Oh, you managed to change it. Now they say that they have KBS3. It is no solution, as you have heard before here during this conference. It is an excuse to go on. I have been discussing in the Swedish parliament about this. I have accused them that you are criminals because you have promised the people in Sweden that we shall not produce spent fuel until we know how to handle it. But every day, 10 reactors are producing more and more fuel. And as they have upgraded the 10 reactors, I think it will be more than before. So I mean, it is criminal to run the 10 reactors, which have produced an enormous amount of radioactive waste, spent fuel, which we should take care of, our future generations should take care of in 1 million years. I used to say, take the power in your hands. It should be an art. And you can do it if you decentralize the energy supplies and take the power of the energy. I'm myself an owner in a cooperative of wind energy. And we can produce our own electricity and send it to the grid. So I believe very much in smart grids and that we can become our own producers. Because those who have the power in their own hands, they have also power over the economy. So become your own producer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you're also the most disciplined present speaker today. Discipline in time. I would like to ask all the speakers to take the floor just in front of the audience. So please, your questions now. I see the first hand already, so.
Yes. Well, this is a...
Wait a minute.
What?
Learn it.
Not working.
You just have to
Oh, I
wait.
see. Oh, right. Okay.
That you will answer directly.
Okay.
So please.
No, it doesn't work.
Oh, yes, it's working now. Okay. No, this is very interesting to listen to all of these talks about the economics of nuclear. But what all of you are talking about seems to me to be about investment in nuclear new build. And nobody is talking about capital. Because it seems to me that the reason for the nuclear renaissance is not, we're looking in the wrong place. We're looking in the wrong place. The reason I believe that there is all this talk about building nuclear power stations is because long ago it became obvious that uranium was a very valuable commodity. And I think that in the last 50 years, very rich people and governments have invested huge amounts of money in uranium shares. Now uranium, you must know, is just like sand. It's just sand. And it has no purpose whatever. It can't be used unless you have a nuclear power station. And if there's no nuclear power station and there's no nuclear renaissance, then the uranium just turns to sand again and is worthless. Now all of the money that's tied up in this sand only becomes realized if everybody believes that there's going to be a building of nuclear power stations. So my feeling is that well, do you agree with me? I suppose this is the question. that more interest should be paid to the people, the rich people who own the uranium shares, and the costs of the prices of the uranium shares, and as they move relative to all these questions of building or not building nuclear power stations, rather than worrying about the actual costs of generating electricity, because I think everybody must see that they're not financially real, the electricity costs, but the uranium share costs are very real.
Well, I can
Please
just...
make your question short.
Okay, I can just agree, and that's why I was pressing also this from uranium mining and so on, because it's the best thing is to stop any investment at all, and of course you must stop with the uranium mining, and then if you have a very high shares, of course we can do something about that. But how? We have, in Sweden I used to say, if we shall have nuclear power, we shall mine our own uranium, and uranium is impossible in Sweden. So everybody says, not in my backyard. So it's not working. So, but that is a way to stop that everybody who wants nuclear power should mine themselves. It's mine.
Maybe some additional comment. I think that as everywhere in the share markets, they are not very unstable. Sometimes there are very high spikes, and then a recession, and I see all commodities. Uranium is not very attractive. I think the majority understand it's not very attractive to buy shares in uranium mines because, first of all, if the nuclear power plants, number of nuclear power plants will be stable, which was what is expected at the moment, then so big our supply in this highly enriched uranium, which remains from military activities. That's you know that, for example, in the United States, majority of mines was closed during the last 20 years because on the market the uranium was too cheap to produce. And you know what happens now in Kazakhstan? Then every year they expanding production almost 90-20% per year. That's for others nothing to do, and Kazakhstan is the biggest production now of uranium in the world, and producer number one, which is very specific situation. That's mining of uranium would be profitable for shareholder only in the case if really huge new program of new build starts. Without that, and we see from today, President, there is hope close to the zero. That will be big growth. It will be China building, for example, now about 30 reactors at the moment, but only one country. Then next is Russia and India, that's much less than China. It's only one country which is building and have huge expansion program. It's China. But in China, they're building windmills twice more than nuclear. Just to have in mind. They're not betting only on nuclear. They're betting more on renewables at the moment. But what happens with nuclear in China also not very clear. Only in this moment, they are leaders in new build.
So, the uranium market is really competitive. Uranium is not exchange commodity, but there are some incentives where exchange takes place, and it's really very volatile market. So when people expected this renaissance, prices were just soaring, and now prices are more or less stable now. But as I said, it's not so important for the industry. So it's just a little fraction of the total costs. And the market, really, it's just there are, for example, if somebody decides to mine uranium, it's just establish a venture, a joint venture, registered in the market, and you can buy the shares. And it's quite competitive market, and really, it's not so. I don't see any not so much politics in this. It's just commercial. Commercial.
Can you just go to another question?
У меня вопросы к Леониду Андрееву. У меня вопросы к Леониду Андрееву. Первый вопрос. Вы назвали цену за атомную электроэнергию 4-6 цента. Но это как раз себестоимость энергии, вырабатываемой ветряными станциями. А для атомных станций называются цифры. Вот сегодня называлась минимальная 8, а нормальную цифру называют от 10 до 20. Откуда такая мизерная цифра у вас взялась?
Да.
Ну, как я сказал, цена сильно зависит от того, если мы делим на коэффициент использования полезной мощности. Поскольку мы делим на мощность, нам нужно среднюю получить. Делим, что у нас в числителе, что у нас в знаменателе. Если в знаменателе у нас, допустим, 100%, то у нас будет много. Если у нас в знаменателе 50%, то у нас будет, гораздо больше. Если у нас будет. Вопрос, то есть вы зависите хотя бы от этого. Мы брали предельно консервативные, то есть старались учесть все издержки, которые в общем, не учитываются при Росатоме, условно говоря, которые не являются, которые не регистрируются, которые не описываются, но мы пытались брать самые консервативные оценки, самые наиболее благоприятные для атомщиков. Просто для того, чтобы не было как можно меньше подозрений в предельности.
Я понял так, что ваша цена бы соответствовала бы действительной цене, если бы атомщики использовали атомные реакторы не на 60-70%, а на 200%. В противном случае этого получиться не может.
Да, но 30, ну можно, конечно, здесь еще очень много, я назвал те параметры, которые являются спекулятивными, выбор которых зависит от нашей доброй воли в значительной степени. Это можно обсуждать, те assumptions, которые мы применяем.
Вы понимаете, когда мы называем такие цифры, мы сбиваем с толку всех людей. Люди начинают думать, что действительно атомщики правы. Вон какая дешевая электроэнергия, а в действительности она в несколько раз дороже.
Да.
Интересно посчитать, скажем, издержки после реактора ядерного автомобильного цикла. Есть методология, которая используется для их расчета. Если учитывать многие вещи, которые здесь называются, медицинские, экологические и другие проблемы, было бы очень хорошо их каким-то образом явно, в экономическом виде учитывать. Если это можно учитывать, я не знаю, как это можно делать. Например, через судебные издержки. Если, допустим, вот эти вот damages, если, допустим, атомная станция знает, что с какой-то вероятностью она должна будет платить людям, которые ущерб здоровью, которых она нанесет, эти издержки можно будет учитывать. Можно будет потребовать, чтобы был какой-то фонд, который бы они отчисляли. Я просто как экономист, я пытаюсь ее перевести на...
Хорошо, я ответ понял. То есть эта цена не соответствует реальной цене, это желательная, но нереальная. Второй вопрос. Вот у вас была там строка по поводу СО2, но ведь уже давно известно, исследования провели американские ученые, подтвердили, что весь ядерный комплекс выбрасывает СО2 так же, как и тепловые атомные станции. А по мере объединения урановых руд эта стоимость будет все выше, то есть цифра будет все выше и выше. Поэтому о СО2 стоило бы уже забыть. Это очередной миф атомщиков. Ну и по поводу топлива ядерного. В Конституции России четко записано, Россия не принимает ядерное топливо на хранение, оно принимает на переработку. И после этого возвращает все результаты назад заказчику. А это получится во много раз больше объем этих отходов. Так что вот на это и рассчитывайте, если вы собираетесь в Россию что-то посылать. Это не реплика, это реальная вещь.
Извините, есть другие вопросы.
Выключите микрофон, пожалуйста.
Все есть.
У меня два вопроса. У меня два вопроса, и оба господину Вильямсу. Япония одна из самых технологически продвинутых стран мира. Она строила свои атомные электростанции все с особым запасом прочности в сейсмоопасном регионе, в так называемой Тихоокеанской огненной дуге. Но факт сегодня остается фактом. Грянула Фукусима спустя 25 лет после Чернобыля и лишний раз подтвердила, мирный атом таковым не является. Скажите, не пришло ли то время, чтобы нам собирать камни, а не разбрасывать? То есть закрывать атомные электростанции, а не их плодить на Земле? Это первый вопрос. Второй. Скажите, сегодня новая Висагиновская атомная электростанция, она имеет технико-экономическое обоснование? Или она такой же политический проект, как и примерно Островецкая площадка? Островецкая атомная электростанция. Все.
На второй этап, как вы сказали, так и есть. А на первый вопрос, это просто сама жизнь все на свое место поставит. Так как явно видно, что в новых условиях экономически атомные станции строить, во всяком случае, в странах с рыночной экономикой абсолютно не выгодно, не экономично, они не строятся. А Китай там поживем, увидим.
Второй вопрос, вы не ответили.
А я сказал, что так, как вы сказали, так и есть. Так, как и у вас, так и у нас. В данном случае экономика не играет, даже разговоров не показывает. Говорят, читайте this report из International Atomic Energy Agency, latest report, который я вам показывал, но год до этого был отчет, в котором там все в таких красивых цифрах, очень дешевая электроэнергия, потому что строительство стоит только $2000 за киловатт. И вот на базе этих цифр для публики, а все остальное это чисто политические аргументы. То есть в данном случае аргумент, он в какой-то степени понятен, это security of supply, стать независимым от поставок энергии из Востока.
Rasa Navickienė, Visi Vilnius. Visi tai ne visi, bet Viešo interesų apsaugos institutas. Klausimus profesoriui Jurimui. Kaip taip atsitiko, kad spaudoje eskaluojama elektros energijos kaina, ypatingai tai, ką pateikė vyriausybė, šnekama apie 18 centų. Jūsų nuomonė, iš tikrųjų, kaip dabar bus daromos korektyvos? Pasikeitė iš esmės siūlomo reaktoriaus tipas. Atsirado stres testas po Fukushimos, labai daug naujų faktorių atsirado. Kaip Jūs manot, kaip iš tikrųjų toliau vystysi šitas procesas ir ar bus tik tai politinė valia statyti Visaginą, ar iš tikrųjų atsiras nauja diskusija ir naujas ekonominis Visagino atominės elektrinės pagrindžimas su realiomis kainomis? Ačiū.
Laimė Lietuva neturi savų pinigų visiškai tokiam objektui statyti, nei cento. Ir viskas, atsakymą duos bankai. Šiandien jums akivaizdžiai rodė. Reiškia, ypatingai trečiajam pranešime, kokia bankų pozicija. Citibankas yra vienas iš pagrindinių institucijų, kurių skaičiais tiki kiti bankai. Nes Citibankas jau senai tais reikalais užsiima, ir tai yra korporacija bankinė. Ir kai nueis mūsų valdžia ar ten administratoriai į bankus, jie gaus ten atsakymą. Niekas neskolins, nes tos kainos, kurias čia bando administratoriai Visagino atominės elektrinės paaiškinti, priimta su sąlyga, kad reiškia, discount bus 5%. Jeigu jūs įdėsit jau 90, aš jau rodžiau tos skaičiavimus, kurie pas mus institutė padaryti, kurie aiškiai rodo, kad tai yra brangesnė elektros energija, netgi prie 8%, o bus aiškiai daugiau negu 10%. Ir kas yra blogai, kad dvi didžiosios valstybės, vyriausybės stipriai remia šitą projektą, bet remia tos valstybės, kurios nori mumis siūlyti savo įrangą. Šiuo atveju jie yra tiekėjai įrangos ir natūralu, kad visos šalis tam yra Exim bankai sukurti, kurie proteguoja savo šalies eksportuotojus ir šiuo atveju pagal tą schemą yra veikiama. Bet tos lėšos, kurios ateis iš tų dviejų bankų, man atrodo, nesudarys nedidelės dalies tos sumos, kurie reikalinga statyti, ir kiti bankai viską pasakys į savo vietą.
Coming from Finland and hearing about the situations in two big problems which we have. The first problem is, of course, Olkiluoto 3 that is already delayed years and years, and the costs have been very, very high. It's the Nordic consumers have been paying already 3 billion euros, and also French taxpayers have been paying quite a lot during these years. The second problem for us is now the new decision of our parliament to give the permission for Fennovoima to build a new reactor in the Nordic part of Finland, in Pyhäjoki. And you, Leonid Andrei, told that you'd like to see the investors to go mad. I would also like to do that. I really would like to see E.ON that is the biggest shareholder in Fennovoima with 34%. And actually my request for the conference here is that to push on E.ON as much as possible and to get their men in Germany to get mad. Because in that way we maybe could get rid of our problem. And in what way could we do that?
I think we're going to talk about it tomorrow, the action plan.
Yeah.
So, one question, and probably it's one to last question, and we can continue after the coffee break.
I have a question to Eva concerning the recent trends concerning nuclear in Sweden. Because a few years ago it was a lot of messages in the media that the Swedish government going to reconsider the results of a referendum which happened in 1980 and want to go for nuclear. Does it change after the Fukushima, or it's still the same plans to go for new reactors? Because our government is using that argument as an example, because, for example, in Finland we are building Olkiluoto 3, and Sweden is also considering to go for it, and that's like the advanced countries, and we need to follow it. So, how it's in reality?
Thank you for your question. I think that there is just one person who believes that we will build these 10 reactors, and that is Jan Björklund in the Liberal Party. I think all the others have changed their minds after Fukushima, and you can see also the polls that the Swedish people doesn't want it. And we haven't seen anything yet about the legislation that it should be reality. And we have a new Minister of Energy. So the Greens have put questions to her. I have also this in my computer, and I don't think they are interested to do something. What they are doing, they are putting the German state in court in US, because Vattenfall has got interests in the nuclear industry and the nuclear power in Germany. That's what has happened. And the ministers in Sweden said, no, that's okay, that the Vattenfall use, they put the favor of new reactors.
May I add a little bit about Swedish situation? You know that, of course, in the law is stated that in Sweden it's not allowed to use any new site, only existing site, and number of reactors should be the same. It means that they are not allowed to build any new nuclear reactor before they shut down at least one of them. But there is the situation is very unfavorable for new build because in 2025 in Sweden, if in this average meteorological year they have 50 terawatt-hours oversupply of electricity or overcapacity, they don't need simply to build any generation, not only nuclear. Why? Those very few years ago was very exciting plans about new offshore and new wind farms. Now it's a little bit reduced because simply there is no need for new electricity. Sweden is a very energy intensive country, and now economics is in such a way that there is no growth of demand in the country. It's stable, it's horizontal, and the capacity is long operation time. They will run their hydro and nuclear at least 20-25 years from now. It's no economical interest to build new generation.
Yeah, that was, I had also, you saw it, and they have prolonged our reactors for 60 years instead.
That's why I add what it is a great chance for Lithuania after construction of interconnector between Sweden and Lithuania. We can import 1,700 megawatts from Sweden because always available that capacity. And you know, in Nord Pool, the market price is about the same what we now have in Lithuania. That's those interconnectors, both interconnectors with Sweden and Poland, and one additional Estonia, making both countries very secure with electricity to supply in any new build, new big construction of nuclear or any others, and independent from that point of view that supply can come from different directions.
Thank you for this confusing discussion we have been having for 2 hours now. 1 year ago we had another seminar in Sweden with Georgi Lepin, and an eminent Swedish expert, Åke Sundström, invited to us to discuss the costs of nuclear industry. And it was very clear, and these videos you can find on the internet on the webpage bsrrw.org, bsrrw.org, under section costs. 2 videos about the costs, and Åke Sundström very clearly stated that he is financial expert of high quality in Sweden and he's worked in the government, that nuclear power has made Sweden poor, and every Swedish family has lost 1 million crowns on that Sweden has made the choice to build nuclear power. I would really rather prefer the type of discussions that Yuri Lepin is doing, because these confusing discussions that we have had today, they really take away the focus from the very essence that nuclear energy is totally subsidized. 1. Then the costs of nuclear mining are not included well. Then the costs of nuclear waste are not included. So this is a military industrial complex operation that is just a cover-up as an industry. And I would really prefer much clearer discussions in this question. As well, we have not discussed the international colonization banking fraud that is involved in all of these flows. We can't have this unserious type of discussions that we have had today. Lithuania is having bank crisis. People are really, this is a genocidal situation. You have seen graphs, demographics are going down, deaths are going up in all the states around the Baltic Sea. Let's get serious, we have only 1 day left, and we are all exhausted.
Just very quick remark from me. These are presentations like any other presentations in the conference, and every expert has his own opinion. We have a day of discussions tomorrow, so it's not a confusing presentation, but it's a presentation of experts. So please respect every opinion of every person in this room. And you just can discuss it later on what was presented.
And please respect my opinion too.
This was not a question, but a more general remark. I would like to conclude now. I think that we have a short time for the coffee break, which will be taken a bit from the next session. So please be back. We are starting sharp at 4:15. Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry. One last minute of your attention, and you will be very pleased. Please, Mr. Leben. He wants to distribute very interesting and valuable books, and he will tell very few words about his books. So you can go for the coffee break and get his books. Please listen.
Извините, я вас на пару минут оторву. Первое, мне кажется, вам была бы очень полезная одна интересная информация. Одна интересная информация. В Японии было 53 атомных реактора. Как вы думаете, сколько сегодня работает? Кто-нибудь может назвать цифру? Тишина. Так вот, работают на середину прошлого месяца, по данным, 11 реакторов из 53. За последние дни вроде бы остановили еще один реактор, то есть реально осталось 10, меньше 1/5. Ну и второй момент. У меня здесь есть несколько книжек. Книга одна по событиям в Чернобыле, о людях чернобыльских. Вторая и третья – это по атомной энергетике. К сожалению, на русском почти все у меня разошлись. Есть на английском языке. И есть диск, на котором все книги записаны, включая их переводы. Если у кого-то желание такое есть, подойдите. Спасибо.